Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I am your host, Jay Edgar, and I am here to welcome back one of the first guests that we had on this show, Stephen Ignoramus. Stephen, welcome back to Ed's World.
What is up?
How was your day today?
Pretty good. Just did a stream earlier, and I've just been catching up on the news. I was out of town this weekend in upstate New York, and I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of things.
Well, upstate New York is gorgeous. Where did you go up there, if you don't mind saying? You don't have to.
I was in Ithaca and Watkins Glen, so just
Oh,
on like
nice.
the Finger Lakes right there.
The most I've seen of upstate is when I moved from Wisconsin to Boston and then back. I drove across the I-90 stretch over there, and I think Ithaca is not too far from there, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was beautiful.
I have a shotgun that came from there.
Nice. That's great.
Before we get started, I want to talk about people that don't know anything about guns that are trying to make gun control happen. I saw a tweet earlier today about some guy, and he was Britain. He was name calling the United States or anybody in there who is in favor of having guns out there. And he showed a picture of a guy sitting at Yosemite carrying, open, because you can open carry in Wyoming. And he's sitting there just not doing anything. And the guy says, well, I feel unsafe because this guy is sitting here with a revolver on his hip, and he had a Glock.
Oh no.
If you're gonna make gun control proposals, know something about guns, because
I
that is.
saw there was more than like 13,000 replies to that.
Oh, you saw that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of them were saying it's a semi-auto.
Yeah. It's a semi-auto revolver.
Well, I mean, technically a revolver is somewhat a semi-auto, but one trigger pull, one bullet.
Yeah.
It's just semi-auto is manufactured to operate completely differently than a simple action revolver. Well,
That
it
was funny.
looks like we're going to have a pretty packed show tonight, and we're going to try and make a hot out here because we're recording this on Monday night, and our friends over at the Generational Gap are having a very special guest on tonight. Maybe you and I are going to have that same guest here in the near future. Who knows? Anything could happen. But for those of you who are listening back the next day, make sure you go back over to the Generational Gaps channel and check out their interview with Lauren Chen, which for the rest of you happened on Monday night, but for the two of us hasn't happened yet. So we'll make sure to go and check that out. And from what I was seeing on your Discord server, it looks like you have yourself a little announcement too, if you want to share that.
Something on my Discord server? Sorry, man. I don't know what are you talking about me going live or what?
No,
Or yeah.
your history special with John.
Oh yeah, yes. We still haven't booked the date of that yet. Sorry, I just book so much stuff every week that I just forget about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a history call-in show coming up soon. I was actually going to ask if you wanted to call in, but what we're going to be doing is doing like a 2-hour podcast focusing on European and colonial history in kind of the 1200s to 1700s range.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to do is try to book 9 or 10 different callers to call in and like give their take on a certain theme, transatlantic slave trade or John's going to talk about the Magna Carta and just stuff like that. So we're going to try to book a lineup of callers. So that's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 days, and I'll be posting the date of that when we do it. So if anyone is a history mind out there, we'd love to have you call in.
Is this just going to be a one-time thing, or are you guys thinking on doing a series like that? Because
We'll
did you listen last week when I said I'm starting to do a series myself on civics review that I'm going to put out? So
Oh, cool. Yeah, we probably won't do a series or something like that, but if there's success, we'll definitely build on it. I mean, an issue-based call-in thing is what I kind of one of the things I want to do. So basically, is as more people, if it becomes popular, I definitely want to do something on it, but not really a series yet. We'll see.
well, I mean, you had a pretty big chunk of time there too, so I wasn't sure if that was because that's like what 500 years you have listed up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little rough of a plan. Like I don't know, we'll probably narrow it down or something like that, but basically what we're looking to do is just get people on that know about certain subjects and have them riff for 10 or 12 minutes, and then we'll bring the next person on. So if we need to I mean, history is so dense, we could even just do a 10-year period and have that be the thing. We'll just see how it goes. I know I didn't realize that the Magna Carta was so early in history. Like
Yeah.
I thought it was like in like I don't know, the 1500s is like 1245 or something like that. Like, damn,
Yeah, it's been
history,
around
yo.
for a while.
Yeah, it wouldn't have affected common folk like us though.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a pretty packed show going on here tonight. We were talking about this a bit off mic, but just go down the list of what we've got going on here. There was a petition circling to have people go and invade Area 51 because they can't shoot us all, was
That's
the
right.
reasoning behind that. So we'll talk a bit about that and some of the societal backlash that came from that and some of the memes that came out of that as well, because, I mean, there are entire Instagram pages now based on memes about Area 51. So we'll talk a bit about that. The squad has been in the news this past week. Vanessa and I touched on this just a little bit last week because it was first developing, but this has turned into a full-blown idea. So we'll sit back and we'll talk a little bit about that, where it began and where we're at now with it. A gentleman went to an ICE detention center in Washington and attempted to firebomb it, and he is now deceased. We will discuss his motives, possibly the manifesto, and where we go from here. Robert Mueller is back in the news because the Democrats can't keep from trying to impeach people. Al Green floated a resolution through the House to try and get the impeachment started and failed miserably. And they are going to be having Robert Mueller back in front of the House on Thursday. So we will talk about that. As we always do on this show, we will be talking about the issues that surround the 2020 election and what has changed over the last week. And to close out, just like we did the last time you were on this show mysteriously, I swear to God I'm not planning this, but we've got a couple items from foreign policy we need to discuss as well, both in the Iranian dispute across the world and with Puerto Rico, because we kind of saw the beginnings of this show during Hurricane Maria. It is going to be all of this and more on Ed's World. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube and BitChute. If you like what you see, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, and if you're not currently subscribed, hit that subscribe button as well. Ed's World is available on audio platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Podcast. Make sure you subscribe there if you want to take this show on the go. And if you are on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. Ed's World, as well as all of your shows, are proudly partnered with Freedom Scoop Media Group. Make sure you go over there and check out this show. You can check out Stephen's shows. You can check out The Generational Gap, as we mentioned before. We're starting to file in some writers, and we're starting up a merch shop, it looks like. Details to come on that. After a lengthy introduction, it is time, as always, to learn about the most important part of Ed's World. So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a interviewer, a live streamer, and a musician. I live in Washington, D.C., and I don't know, I've been working on my channel for about 6 months or so, and I try to stream every day of the week mostly. I mean, I try to do midday every weekday with my daily Ignoramus stream, and I try to do 2 to 3 interviews a week with my show Call Me Ignorant, and then I do some live concerts where you see me kind of just playing guitar and stuff like that. And I don't know, I teach kids music and try to stay informed. I have like a Discord server where people can call in and send me links, and I just try to stay pretty informed online, and I sometimes fail at that.
And your guitar is actually what the audience heard when we bled into this podcast, so thank you
Nice.
for that.
Yeah, so yeah, life's good. I just like talking to informed people and experts in fields, controversial figures and stuff like that. And I had a really good interview with this dude Michael Jones last week on Wednesday. That was great, and my channel got a big boost from that. And I don't know, just hanging out.
Well, one of the questions I always love to ask my guests, because the story is always different, but the story always ends over on the left side of the screen, is how did you decide to get into alternative media? I know you've been on the show and you've told the story once before, but with any luck, we've got some new viewers after that. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually writing a blog post about this right now. I'm kind of doing it in a funny way. What I'm going to do is, like, like from the Bible and also from the Lord of the Rings, they have like the lineage map.
Hmm.
They have like David, son of whatever, like Owen, son of Glowin. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to trace my like content lineage, like you're asking me, like how I got into this stuff. And it basically goes from YouTube conspiracy stuff to like the intellectual dark web, and now it's settled on just kind of most people I listen to now are people that have been like banned and deplatformed from a bunch of stuff. So it's this basically like a 13, 14 step lineage thing that led me through like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson. Now I listen to some like Owen Benjamin, Gavin McInnes, stuff like that. And I don't know, just kind of that. And the whole thing started with me listening to like college lectures and stuff like that. Like there was one year they released a bunch of Yale lectures onto YouTube. I think that was like 6 or 7 years ago, and it just took me that way. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to get into making my own content online. I was really scared at first, actually, and I just started this year, and I guess we call it alt media.
Well, we are glad to have you, and Jake must have been glad to have you too because he invited you to join up on our group. So you must be doing something right.
Yeah, just doing a lot of it.
Well, without further ado, I think it's time to sit down and talk about the issues of the week. And we'll start with this Area 51 thing.
Yes.
So, this past week there was was it further back than this past week already? My weeks are running together fast. I think it was like 2 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, maybe 11 days ago, something like that.
Oh, I didn't load up the image. Well, I guess that's not going to happen this time then. It was 2 weeks ago, somebody raised a petition on Facebook to have a bunch of people go and storm Area 51 so we can see the aliens inside. The logic behind this being that they can't shoot us all. This has streamed some major media backlash and some pretty awesome memes, but for the most part, it looks like this seemed to be a great big joke from the outset of it. But there are some other tinfoil theories that have come out about this as well. So, what have you seen on this so far?
Well, first of all, what I thought about this when I when I heard about it is, they can't shoot us all, but if Eric Swalwell wins, then they can nuke us all. So maybe it kind of synchronized with him dropping out of the race, and now that he's out, they're free to not bomb us. And but the first, aside from that, when I first saw this happening, is I love this stuff. This stuff is some of my favorite stuff as like kind of a conspiracy dude or whatever. And I just I've thought about aliens my whole life, and I've I just even and it's when the lines are blurred between who's joking, who's serious. There's actual Facebook groups. The Air Force actually put out a statement saying they're ready to use force if they do storm it. And I just almost everything about this I love. That's my first thoughts on it.
Well, since you're into conspiracy and such, and that was what led you down the path to alt media, do you think that there's actually something in there worth seeing?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I'm not a big aliens guy. Like I'm like the reason I'm into conspiracies is because the only thing I'm sure about is that you can't trust the full mainstream narrative. I'm not a big aliens dude. I'm not a big like lizard people, flat earth, not really. Not only do I not believe, I don't know if I believe in those things. I'm not even informed on what the conspiracy people think about those things, but I do believe that if you believe exactly what you're being told, that's you're missing it. So that's the reason I'm into this kind of stuff. But I think that anything that has this kind of mystique surrounding it has to have something there. I don't think it's like Martian men. It might be. That'd be kind of cool. But it's a military testing facility, so it has to have something worth seeing. I mean, my living room has stuff worth seeing in it.
You mentioned that you don't believe in the conspiracies or the lizard people. Have you ever listened to the podcast Lizard People?
No, I have not. Tell me about it.
I recommend that. That was actually part of the reason that I started getting into the audio podcast and deciding that I wanted to do that. It's a California girl, a comedian. Her name is Caitlin Hempstead, and she has another comedian come on every single week, kind of like I do, a different guest every week. And they talk about a conspiracy theory, but since both people are comedians, it's mostly just joking and not serious. It's really funny. Sometimes
Okay.
they get into stuff serious, but for the most part, they're just whipping jokes back and forth at each other.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
it's recommended.
yeah, I'll take a listen to it. I mean, that seems like the best way to handle conspiracy stuff when you don't have any power over it. You can either let it take over your life, you can make jokes about it, or you can totally ignore it, or shades of gray in between. But it's good to make fun of, and if it turns out being true, I mean, the conspiracies that aren't funny are the ones that are true. It's one like like Gulf of Tonkin, things that are like complete lies that have been told to get us into huge wars and stuff like that, and that's stuff that's bothersome. But even then, you can make fun of it.
Right. And I do want to talk a little bit about the conspiracy behind that, but first I want to talk about some of the stuff that I've seen going on. Like I said, there's an entire Instagram page that has come up called Area 51 Memes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just talking the one of the gimmicks that they use a lot is the time traveler meme, and one of the favorite ones that I saw was time traveler or was you colon this is the year that, or we're going to go storm Area 51, I believe is what it said. And then it was Time Traveler. Oh, so this is the year of the Great Area 51 massacre. And it's just been crazy stuff like that. I know there was one that surrounded World War One because the time traveler went back and the person said, "Well, this is the year that the Great War is going on," and the time traveler says, "Oh, you mean World War One?" And the other guy's like,
Yeah, I'm looking at the Instagram right now. There are some good memes on here.
"Yeah." I know it's mostly a shout out page for other Instagrams, but I mean, when you cut through the crap and you actually see the good memes, there were some good ones out there for it.
I saw one of Joe Biden sniffing an alien.
Yeah, that was good.
It might have been real though. You never know.
Well, I mean, who knows how old they are? I mean, if they're in
Yeah,
Area 51, even then they're going to be younger than Joe Biden.
yeah. It made me want to watch Independence Day. It's one of my favorite movies.
I have never seen Independence Day,
Oh my goodness, you must, sir.
but after the discussion I had with Matt Walsh, I can also admit the fact that I've never seen Top Gun.
Oof.
But neither is
Oof.
Walsh, so.
Okay, that's cool. You guys can hang.
But apparently he's never seen Days of Thunder because I've seen bits and pieces of Top Gun. I figured it was just Days of Thunder with planes, and then he asked, "What's Days of Thunder?" Well, there's some tinfoil that's surrounded this whole Area 51 thing, and I think a part of it was that there were some moves going on in the government at the time. There were some shifts that were possibly going around. It possibly could have had some things to do with the squad, but for the most part, people are saying that the fact that this hit the news and became a serious thing was the fact that the news was trying to distract us from something else that was going on at the time. I know that they're talking about, when we talk about the Iranian thing, that this was the second British ship that was captured by Iran.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, I think the first ship that would have been captured would have been right about the time that this happened. So I have to wonder if that has something to do with it, or if they're trying to distract us from something else entirely in all of this. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think that type of stuff goes on all the time. So it's a question of like, from what are they trying to distract, and and how like kind of how deep down the tinfoil hat road you want to go. Like, if I think the biggest group for Area 51 is on Facebook, and I think over 1 million people joined. I think within the first couple days, and if it's the people that started that group are trying to distract people, that's a little, I don't know, weird or conspiratorial. But I don't know. I just like, I more see that the entire news cycle entertainment like thing is made to distract us, and it's you could waste your whole day just speculating about for what and why. I mean, I was on AP News today, and I think there were 30 articles on AP News, and like 15 of the 30 were sports and food, and that's AP News. So it's kind of like pick your poison. I don't know. Maybe the alien people, the people that are really into following aliens, are the ones who want to distract more. But I don't know. It's just really hard to say. I mean, the Iran thing's been going on for a while, and you know, I just don't know without knowing more information. But it certainly is distracting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's most distracting when you think about that this might be conspiracyception because this is a conspiracy theory, if it's true, about a place that's basked in conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think they had to come clean that it existed. I believe in 2005 or 2009, maybe might have been 10 years ago. So until then, they didn't even tell people that it existed in the first place. It was just always like a thing, like people had to speculate about its even existence, and now people on September 20th are apparently going to storm it. They can't shoot us all.
I find that hard to believe that they only released evidence of it now because I mean there was that video game that came out in the 90s, the arcade game.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I mean we knew about it before that.
Yeah. It's all, and it's just like all a long game. I don't know. It's all a distraction.
Do you think they're actually going to go storm it or
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt anyone is going to storm it. I mean, if they do, like I think I don't remember who I was saying this to, but it's kind of like a win-win if you don't storm it. You know, like if I'm not going to storm it. So if people do it, and they get all taken out, it sucks for them. But then like the government, there might be like an uprising against the government. But if they get through, we'll find something. It's kind of, and if you keep an open mind to just things being interesting and dark, it's kind of a win-win. And if they don't, we get good memes.
Yeah, absolutely. The government uprising thing, yeah, I think that's an interesting idea because I mean, we're due for one, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? The Jefferson quote. I don't know how many years. I think Jefferson used to say that we should renew the Constitution every 35 years or so. And it's been a long time since, I mean, they planned some uprisings in like the 90s and those got squashed.
Well, yeah, the man is keeping them down. It's the man. It's a big conspiracy. They can't rise up.
The green man.
Well, and I don't know too, because I'm on the fence as to whether or not this is going to happen or not. I mean, the creator of the group came out and just said that this was a great big joke.
Okay.
But the other side of that is never underestimate the abilities of stupid people in large groups because they will find a way to go ahead and make this happen anyway. If their mind is set to do it, their mind is set to do it. But the other thing that kind of bothers me about this is a lot of the people that are into the group think like that would actually go and storm something like this, that would actually go and try to pull this off, are the people that believe everything the government is saying and that we should be growing the government anyway.
Oof. That's believing that we should grow the government is it's harder to believe than aliens.
Well, with that in mind, and the fact that we don't know what's going to happen or not, let's take a second and talk about something where we do know what is going on with this. So, the squad is in the news again because they came out and they had a big press conference this past week to try and address what it was that the president said. They did this at the chagrin of Nancy Pelosi, who doesn't like the fact of any of this that's going on. But, I mean, Vanessa and I talked about this at length last week as to why we think that this is happening. But I thought the story was going to be done by the end of the weekend, and it just keeps growing into anything else. What do you, from last Friday on to today, what have you seen so far?
Well, I mean, it's the racism has become a bigger deal. I didn't think that'd be possible, but the word racism has been just beat all over the Twitter universe, and I don't know. I wrote a blog post about it. I've been talking about a lot on my show. And it's also interesting that the whole Pelosi thing was funny because AOC essentially called. She didn't call. I looked up what she said. AOC didn't call Pelosi a racist, but she said some racist things within the week before, and then
Right.
Trump came to Pelosi's defense, saying like, "Oh no, Nancy's not a racist," like, and it was just kind of funny timing, and but like I don't know. Uh, it's just if you pay attention to too much Twitter, your brain will turn into mush. And I think that happened to me over the last week.
Well, speaking of Twitter, let's take a second and look at where this all started. And I've got the pictures loaded up here. So, where this is going to start, it appears Donald Trump had a tweet out. It was a tweet thread here, and I'll just kind of cycle through everything as we go. It starts out as Donald J. Trump. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world if they are even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, then come back and show us how it is done? These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. So this is where this all started, and now we're sitting at a point where these four congresswomen, who were not named by name and who were not named by race or anything like that, are now sitting back at the forefront of the news. And as my guest last week mentioned, the fact that now all of the Democrat Party is united behind these four women, whereas they were starting to fall out of favor with the rest of the Democrat Party. Do you think this is a giant machination from the president to try and make this happen and trying to make them be the center of focus for everybody again?
I actually don't know. I mean, probably. I mean, if you want to, I don't know if you want to like splinter the Democratic Party. You get people. Some of the people behind these four. Are they all in the House? None of them are senators, right?
That is correct.
Is all House members. Yeah, if you get people behind these young congresswomen, then that'll certainly fragment it a little bit. But it's also I don't really know like if you're talking the like the 4D chess or whatever angle of like Trump's strategy. I don't know what to think about this because he did, like you said, he didn't mention him. There's kind of a couple points there. He didn't mention them by name, but he didn't need to. Everyone knows who he's talking about. But number two, he didn't bring up race at all. Right. And I don't even at its this has been one of my points about Trump for a while on my show is that it's just weird when they go after him for things that he isn't doing when there's things that he is doing that are bad. If you like, I don't really like the term like phobia or whatever, because that just means like a fear or whatever. But in this modern society, it's become like a hatred of something. I mean, and those are certainly by the left's definition like xenophobic, like hatred of another country or bad mouthing another country, but doesn't bring up race. Like, what if they were Norwegian?
Yeah, and absolutely.
And all four of them are different races, and it's just very, very strange that that part seems by design. Like he says that, and people are like, it was racist because there's a precedent in this country of saying go back to your country. But the go back to your country statement doesn't involve race in the first place. It just involves country. And, if he's trying to like get people to think about the nation more, that seems to be more his direct angle than trying to play games with the Democrats. I mean, it might be a byproduct, but it just seems like he's trying to bring up the idea of the nation more, or and have people think about whatever country, Palestine, Ilhan Omar's from Somalia, like, and America. But it's, I don't know. But if you wanted to fragment the Democratic Party, you get like everyone around, behind these people, but what if everyone gets behind them?
Hmm.
Then you just have a crazy, uninformed Democratic Party. I'm not really that sure.
Well, the hard part about it for me is the fact that, as most people are bringing up when they talk about this, three of the members of the squad are native born U.S. citizens.
Right.
Ilhan Omar is the only one that actually came from another country, but I mean,
Yeah.
she is a naturalized citizen as well, and we'll probably talk about that in a little bit as we go further down this story. But I mean, it's not like they came from another country.
Yeah.
And Cortez is, I mean, her nationality isn't even from another country. She's Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
That's a U.S. territory.
Right.
But the understanding that I get out of first off is yes, we don't know whether or not this was, well, we know this was directed at them, but for
Yeah.
the most part, we don't know that this was directed at them. But I mean, we all saw the Family Matters episode when we were kids where some Chicago kid, which never actually happened in Chicago, but I mean, some Chicago kid wrote on Laura Winslow's locker, "Go back to Africa." So the sentiment is behind this is there. There's reason that this is coming up, and I don't know if it's orchestrated, and I don't know if this was just a happy accident, but I understand where the left is coming from when they hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just. Yeah. I just. I don't disagree. I just think that like the argument of when because there's a precedent of it, like how strong, like the argument when I've talked to people on the left, like on my chat and stuff like that, who've come on my show, not on my show, but just come into my chat and been like, well, he didn't mention race, and they're like, you know what he meant, and it's like, but he is by in your terms being xenophobic, so why don't you say that? Because that's kind of more my point. I mean, he did say the word country, and he did say go back. He did say go back to your country, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, can't you just go after him for what he said? I mean, that is a thing, and like, I don't know. I guess the I don't know. I just haven't like I haven't heard the go back to Blackland or go back to like Asia land. You know,
Or
it's countries. You
or
know,
go back to Africa for that matter, because that would more imply a genetic race rather than a nationality. Because I mean, that encompasses the whole half of a continent that
right?
is genetically similar, not necessarily just a specific country that's in shambles.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and the part, if you take it literally, I mean, Trump makes a good point about about other countries are in shambles, and a lot of people just like to say that we're that it's just bad here, but you know millions of people are coming here from other places when and it is kind of a thing of like, if you take race, nationality out of it, and it's just like, if someone's telling me to do how to do my job, but then they can't do their own job on any other turf, insert any word, if it's live streaming, music, whatever, it does make sense to be like, okay, well, why don't you clean up some other place and tell me how it's done, since I am doing such a bad job? That part is a good point, especially if it's like in a business sense. It's like if you're like telling a person how to run a hotel and your motel looks like shit, but
Yeah,
I
clean
don't
your
know.
own house first. I've
Yeah.
suggested that Chuck Schumer do the same thing
Yeah.
on
So
one topic.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of complicated, but also, I don't know. To me, you got to be on the lookout for anytime these stories become like massive tidal waves. I mean, Trump tweets like that all the freaking time, all the freaking time, and it happens now for this reason over these people, and you got to wonder why.
Well, and there are a lot of people out there that make certain suggestions. I mean, of course, we have the massive suggestion that this was to try and attempt to get the rest of the Democrat Party that was splintering off into business Democrats, neoliberals, and the progressives to circle the wagons back around a series of very progressive people and try and unite them back behind the progressive banner. Because if you look at the polls, Donald Trump in the presidential election versus generic progressive socialist wins 78 to 22%. So if he's trying to unite the party underneath that banner to try and make them all progressive socialists, I mean, there's that, but we don't know what's going on. And this could all be just happy stupidity. I don't necessarily account everything that the Donald does to plan, as some people do. I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh,
just,
hell no.
sometimes I think it's just a knee jerk stupidity reaction, and it turns out in his favor. I think the guy's got a horseshoe shoved up his ass, to be completely honest.
Hmm. Yeah, I put it at like you know, 25 to 30% of his decisions are, call it the 4D chess angle, and the rest are pretty impulsive. But he's pretty effective, and I don't know. I don't know. It's another thing I talk on my show about all the time is I think there's just certain things that the common person is never going to know. We're not allowed to know. I think there's certain things that Donald Trump is not allowed to know,
Hmm.
even though he's the president. And if I had like a mind reading device, I would, get in his brain and break it down word by word. And it's like, why'd you use that word instead of that word? I would love to know, but he might talk about it when he's out of office or something like that.
Well, and there are the people out there too that say the same thing. It's that he's misspelling certain words specifically to try and get people talking about it. He's screwing with punctuation to get people to talk about it. I mean, the guy was educated at Wharton. He's not dumb.
Yeah. Have you heard? Yeah, I mean, interviews with him from the 80s and 90s, he speaks completely differently.
Hmm.
And same thing with George W. There's a little bit of an act here,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's hard to pin down which part it is, but he's doing something.
Well, there are people out there that say that this whole thing has fallen completely out of the president's hands. So let's talk about this chant. Now, the president was
Ooh.
holding a rally shortly after all of this happened, and you could hear the chant while we were going through. I haven't figured out how to add a video to my streams yet, so we'll have to take our words for this. But I mean, everybody's heard the video on other people's streams at this point.
All right.
For the first part of it, you started hearing, one or two people started to say send her back, but it wasn't, catching on. But like I said about large droves of people that are united against one idea when we were talking about Area 51, as more and more people started to see what they were trying to do and start the chant, suddenly the audience came together, united, and started chanting, send her back, send her back. And a lot of people are trying to attribute this to the president, but some of the videos I've seen have shown that it seems like he's not comfortable with this, and this has gotten completely out of hand for him. So, what have you seen on this?
I mean, first of all, not a good look.
Yeah, absolutely.
that's the that's the first takeaway I had from that. Not a good look. And if they're doing it to, I mean, okay, so political rhetoric is a thing. Uh, Trump's the people at Trump's rallies tend to take on somewhat of his personality of you can't tell what's a serious, a troll, a joke, trying to just fan the flames. So and also it's a crowd. I've heard Trump rallies are a little bit of like a party atmosphere, and they're fun.
Yeah.
But definitely not a good look at all. But what I think about this is like, and we're going to talk about the Ilhan Omar thing in terms of her immigration over here and stuff like that in a second. But, and I'm not really a big Trump dude, MAGA dude, but I follow a bunch of them on Twitter and they follow me as well. And they are pretty, it's been a pretty open secret for a while that she was shady about
Oh yeah.
her immigration and stuff, so like a part of me thinks that is there a chance that like most or all of these people are just well informed on her being sketchy about that whole thing. And I mentioned when we were off mic, Beauty and the Beta, and Matt Christensen kind of did a breakdown of the whole process of like her paperwork and stuff like that on the show last night. And and I don't know what the laws are on if you are shady about immigration, whether you can be like, if you've been convicted of a serious crime, like that has something to do with your naturalization process, can you be stripped of your citizenship and sent home? Now, do I think that the people shouting that could articulate that position? I mean, I didn't even do a good job just now, but do you think that whole process goes through their head? Absolutely not. But
No.
but I don't know. Like this has been a thing for at least for at least a year, being passed around the circles of the MAGA right. So it's just like it's a terrible look, but also what are the laws here? Like I guess I'm saying that they could have a point. I'm not saying it about every immigrant at all, but I am saying that like I think that if you broke the law and scheme the system in trying to get naturalized, you know, uh, being stripped of that citizenship is an option. No matter the country, no matter the person. Like if I did this in Japan and tried to game the system, then I would expect to be sent back. I would expect to be like have like a Japanese mob yelling, "Send me back." So it just makes me think about that.
Well, I do want to bring that back around because you brought that up. One of the things that came out of this was a renewal on the idea that Ilhan Omar married her brother to try and get him into the country, but some other documents show out there that her name is suddenly mysteriously changed to what it was on her immigration documents. So now the whole thing is called into question as to whether or not she's even legally a naturalized citizen. And while, yes, I do believe she is because she's been a citizen for so long. It would be really hard for you to go back and strip this at this point. She's what, 40, and she's been here since she was 10.
Hmm.
So, it would be almost impossible for her to go back to Somalia at this point, or to even try and judge anything at this point either, as to whether or not she should be. But this was a legitimate story. The Star Tribune, which is a legitimate newspaper up in the Twin Cities, it's one that I grew up reading, as a matter of fact, did bring this up a couple months ago, talking about whether or not she did marry her brother or not, and now this is coming back to the forefront after it fell off. Much like the kids in cages that we didn't talk about for a year, now we have to talk about because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that we need to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that she's been here since she was a little kid. Um, but wasn't like the sketchiness that she did as an adult though in like the early 2000s? Like, so I guess my main thing is I don't know what the law is. What I try to do as a person, I've been calling myself kind of, I guess you could call me a nationalist in the last, couple months, but mostly I'm a nationalist in the way that I'm like an individualist, where it's like individuals and nations are similar. That is that when they exist and when they exist, they have a right to exist, and they're allowed to do what's best for their own country, whether it's America. Now, when a lot of people talk about being a nationalist, like, oh, you're a white nationalist or you're a black nationalist, what they really mean is a national supremacist. And I'm not that. I don't believe that America has the right to like take over a different country because we're America. But I like, holding most nations to like the same rules. And what I try to do as a thought experiment is put myself in a different country. Like if I'm an immigrant or going over to a different country, and then when I'm 30 years old or when I'm 25 years old, I break a bunch of rules and try to game the system in any way at all. That's kind of, so I don't mean when I'm 10 and I don't really have agency. I mean when I'm older. I would, a nation has a right to make laws and enforce those laws as they see fit. And I wouldn't like to be put to death, and I don't think any immigrant should be put to death for those laws, for that reason either. But nations have the right to make laws and enforce them. And for me, it's mostly about what is the legal precedent here, or what are the laws on the books. And, and if you try to game the system and lie about it when you're of age, what's the law there?
I don't know. I'm definitely not an immigration expert by any means.
Yeah,
but
sure.
And
So
again, it
I don't know.
would depend on who she tried to work through the system. It
Yeah.
doesn't look like it was hers. So do you take away her immigration status as naturalized because of that, or because she's a citizen now, she faces the consequences as a citizen, which would include fines and jail time?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know what the deal is that, but if I were to go over to, I said Japan earlier, or Russia or whatever, and do that, I would expect, I don't know, if I broke the law and tried to game the immigration system and they didn't deport me, I'd be like, damn, all right, it's like, I guess I'm in, like, I guess I'm going to jail, paying a fine, some rubles.
In the interest of time, we're gonna push this along here because we're
Cool.
starting to run a little bit long.
Oh yeah, we are.
So let's talk about this ICE Center firebombing here. An Antifa activist, 69-year-old Antifa activist, stormed a Tacoma, Washington immigration facility with bombs and with guns. He is currently deceased by policeman, but there's talk about the fact that he had a manifesto, and a lot of it was talking about the same things that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez was talking about. I will say I have not read the manifesto. I don't know if it's even released yet at this point or not. But the thing that keeps coming up to people is the fact that this would have put a lot more immigrants in danger than just trying to change the system or the laws somehow. And I'm very afraid that we're going to start to see more of this vigilante justice start to happen. I heard about this from you, so I know that you've talked about this before, but
Mm.
where did you see this happening?
Well, I mean, I have the manifesto open in front of me right
Oh, they
now.
do have it released.
Yeah, it's not released. Someone took screenshots of it, but I don't know. I mean, it could even be fake, but I don't think it is. But yeah, I'm not like. Well, the first thing that was weird about this is that a lot of people were praising this guy. I mean, especially like Sean King was. A lot of people online were just saying that this is like a fallen comrade. That they're like mourning for him. There's like chalk memorials where he died. You see that?
I have not
Yeah.
seen that.
Yeah, that it's like praising what this guy did and stuff like that. So and so I guess the kind of most high profile dude who came out in support of this guy was Sean King. And
What is Sean King even famous for? You're more in tune to
um
entertainment than I am.
well, he got famous through Sean King is just a Black Lives Matter dude. Um uh he I don't think he started Black Lives Matter, but I think he rose to fame as an activist during like the Ferguson days. And I've seen him come out online a couple times being like, I support Antifa. Um and that's basically, he there's a whole thing of like people saying he's white when he's I don't know if he's white. A lot of people that I trust say he is. That like in terms of the legal paperwork that he's claimed to be white several times in his life, and now is claiming to be black. But I think it was the whole Black Lives Matter Ferguson thing, and then like subsequent controversy around him. He's kind of a race baiter. That's what he's in my eyes. That's what he's famous for. He's an activist and kind of like a race baiter.
I mean, I thought he was maybe a rapper or something.
No, he's just a straight up activist. Nah, no. But this guy. I mean, what this kind of in the manifesto, this guy claimed. He says, I am Antifa. I stand with comrades around the world who act from the love of life and every permutation. Comrades who understand that freedom means real freedom for all, and that life is and make life worth living. And it's one of those things where you could easily, if you're on the right, be like, oh, this guy claimed Antifa. But I mean, anyone can claim anything. So it's, this guy was basically a lone actor. But what's happened since then is kind of people have, they're calling him a martyr. So.
Well, and that goes to something that I've been kind of afraid of happening. And I mean, it's a good thing that the Border Patrol was able to take this guy down and make him into a martyr based on the fact that he was going to escalate, and this was the first escalation. As we were going through the midterms last year, I started to think, when I started to see some of the activism and I started to see some of the people talking about what they were going to do if their candidate lost, I mean, if Trump wins, especially in 2020 again, I've got this sinking feeling that we're going to start seeing assassinations, maybe not to the presidential level, but it might happen at that point. Somebody's going to get killed if this doesn't slow down at some point. And now we've seen somebody who actually tried to take the law into his own hands and, make that happen. And what's the next step after this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't see it. I don't see it cooling off. Yeah, people have definitely have like an idea worm in their head that I mean, I guess it's one of the things that make us human is that you have the ability to hear some ideas and it has the ability to radicalize you. And if you don't try to check it, if you don't try to look for the truth somewhere, your brain will run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're all guilty of that a little bit. That's why it's important to kind of like I don't remember what you're saying is your like tagline or whatever, but like draw your own conclusions.
Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, and then even then, I mean, the same facts can have a different emotional impact on 100 different people, 100 different emotional impacts. But and on both sides, I mean, on both sides, there's the crowd that thinks things are so bad that you have to resort to violence, and I don't know. None of it's good. And that's why I'm just big on self-defense and Second Amendment. Is I'm not really like an aggressive, violent guy, other than in self-defense,
Mm-hmm.
and then I am, and so this is definitely one of the things you see on both sides. But you don't see attacks that much. I mean, not open attacks on the government from the right. I mean, you see different things, but this one was pretty crazy, and it just got kind of buried pretty quick by the media.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that too because I did I didn't hear anything out of this from any of the mainstreams. I heard a couple of things from like the Blaze
Hmm.
and from alt media sites, but for the most part, other than CNN, everybody kept pretty quiet about this.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's pretty troubling. Yeah, I mean, fake news exists. It's you know, at this point, you call it 3 or 4 years into this kind of. I mean, fake news has probably been around for decades, and before it was, before we even knew what it was. But it's really been 4 or 5 years since it really got bad, and it's just more of the same. And it's like, I used to think it was like a liberal bias thing, and there is elements of that, but it's all just narrative driven. And I don't know if the people, the actual newscasters, are pushing their narrative, or they're getting, their higher ups are telling them what to do. But there's definitely a narrative here, and you got to be either dumb or not paying attention to see it. So it's just more of the same, to be honest. I mean, if this happened again in a week, it would be gone. A week after that, we'd be back to racism and
Hmm.
kids in cages.
Let's keep going on here. I want to talk. Looks like I've got one pretty decent sized topic and a couple smaller ones, and
Sure.
then it's generational gaps. So let's talk about the Mueller never-ending story because we thought
Oh
the story
yes.
was over, but it seems to have come back. And the first part I want to touch about this is that Al Green decided to push a referendum on impeachment as to whether or not they should bring the idea to the floor to discuss it or not. Now, this wasn't actually an articles of impeachment vote, as a lot of people were saying that it was. This was the referendum to get it to the floor to debate the articles of impeachment.
Okay.
But it failed in the House of Representatives 332 to 95. I don't think the House wants to impeach the president as much as the activists do. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's kind of like what this reminded me of was when, with the Green New Deal, when Mitch McConnell just like he's like, okay, we'll do a vote, and
Oh,
they
you
they
can't do
call
a
a
vote.
vote.
That's racist.
Yeah, and like everyone, people voted. Well, some people voted, and a lot of people just abstained. Like I don't remember. It was some of the bigger players just didn't vote at all, and it was just like, okay, well, if someone's like, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this, and you're like, okay, so do it, and they don't, and you're like, well, you kind of showed your hand there. But I don't know. I mean, you certainly got activists on both sides, and to a certain extent, being a politician is being an activist. You're trying to advocate for a particular policy, particular change, particular group, or whatever. And I don't know if they wanted. I mean, I think it's always kind of been a little game that was gonna, they're gonna push as far as the goalpost will go,
Hmm.
and then they'll take what they can get, and that's why the narrative, not the narrative, but that's why the actual charge has shifted so many times. I mean, it went from outright treason to collusion to obstruction to now to betraying the public trust and high crimes and misdemeanors. So it's just like they're going to take whatever they can get. So I can certainly understand why Trump and his base are so tough and like messing with them so much, because they don't play by any particular rules. I mean, forget like bad rules. They just change the rules so much that it's just like, and then so you got Schiff and Nadler going up there and just basically talking the same shit about a different topic every single day for 3 years.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just like, and so I hope this ends soon. I thought it was going to end with the Mueller report, but also there was that bullshit in the Mueller report about, basically violating innocent until proven guilty. There was like, we couldn't find enough evidence to not convict him. And it was like,
That's not your job.
dude, I was like, and so I've been actually saying this on my stream as well, is I would go a step further and say, I'm not really even a fan of impeachment. I think that the people so for any office, I think that anyone in office should be treated like a normal citizen. And if they're guilty, if they're just charge them with a crime. If you can't, then just treat everyone the same. And I'm not a fan of this DOJ policy that is like, we can't charge the president with a crime. They're just a person that you should just be able to try them. And because what happens in the House is if they have a majority plus any bullshit argument, they can just impeach, and they should just prosecute him or don't. And they clearly can't. So they do this,
Well, to an extent, I think that actually charging and trying an elected official is a conflict of interest. And that's why they do it the way that they do it, because, I mean, for the most part, we hear about the impeachment of the president, but there's also impeachment of Supreme Court justices.
Right.
Representatives and senators can get impeached. In fact, they have over the years in our country. But if you think about the way that our government is set up, I mean, the president is the chief law enforcement agent of the country. So to try him in a regular criminal court seems like that would be a conflict of interest. The legislature makes the laws. To try them in a regular court would be a conflict of interest. I mean, the Supreme Court would be the only branch of the government that it's not a conflict of interest to, but even there, they interpret the law, so they can sit back and interpret it back to the other. There's a reason that we don't hold our elected officials to the same standard as we do to the private citizenry as far as answering for crimes, because of the way that our government is structured. It would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Yeah, just I mean, I don't know what the solution would be. I just don't. It's something about it is like I don't like kings, man. I don't like kings, and I don't like people. I mean, it's just a person. And if he did a crime, then like I mean, maybe what I'm floating would make things even more complicated. I don't know.
I don't know. But speaking of Mueller, because you thought that this was all going to be over because that ended, apparently it hasn't ended yet. Now, I talked last week about the fact that they were starting to talk about this. In fact, the hearing was supposed to happen this past Wednesday, but they delayed it for another week at this point. But
Right.
in spite of the fact that we all got to watch that moving retirement speech from Robert Mueller, saying that he wasn't going to testify in front of the House, Swalwell, for all of his faults, was right, and he is going to now testify in front of the House. Now, a lot of people say that there's not going to be anything new out of this, and that was the point of the speech that Mueller gave when he did his retirement. But there are a lot of other people out there that are saying that Trump is very afraid of Mueller because nobody in the country has read the report, except for me.
For sure. A lot of people, yeah, I have it. I got like 75 pages in, and I was like, Ed's got it.
But yeah, a lot of people have read the report, but the politicians and the general Twitter sphere are saying that nobody's read the report. So what Mueller comes up to say in his testimony is going to be what condemns the president. Now, This report has been released in redacted form to the House of Representatives, and they have read it, and they have still chosen not to bring impeachment to the table. So I don't know what this trending hashtag of Trump's afraid of Mueller is all about, because at 332 to 95, there's clearly nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, yeah. Man, oh, it's just so tiring. I mean, it's so tiring. I was listening to I was reading what Schiff and Nadler were saying today, and like they're just saying like everything they said about Mueller was that first of all, is it Mueller or Mueller? I need to get this right.
I grew up with a girl who had that same last name, and she pronounced it Mueller, but the
You hear
majority of
enough
the
talking,
news,
yeah.
the majority
You
of
hear
the
enough
news
talking
people,
heads saying
yeah,
Mueller, yeah.
yep,
Interesting. Okay, so I'll go with Mueller until I'm corrected.
yeah.
But yeah, they're like, we need to find the facts. We need. It's like, yeah, but he did the report. he put the report forth, and I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. Just so much theater. I mean, if Trump wins again, this might go for another 4 years. It's the most tiring shit ever. It's the biggest case of political blue balls ever. And I've been saying this for a while about Brexit and the Mueller report. And what happened is when the Mueller report got released, Brexit was still going on, and I made an official announcement on my show saying that it's over. Brexit won, and it didn't. It didn't. We don't know because Brexit's in October, and Trump might win again next year. Like this is the longest case of blue balls ever. I just want an outcome.
Which do you think is going to get the outcome first?
Oh man, to be honest, I don't ever see the Democrats resting on this till the day Trump leaves office. Because I don't know, like, because if you think about what the actual end date the actual ending point would be, Brexit would be either they leave or they don't. And now, if they don't leave, this could come up again in 5 years, but we'll count that as a different thing. But with the end point of the Mueller report thing would be literally the Democrats stop talking about it, which is never going to happen. There's going to be one, like, it's like Stacey Abrams. She lost in Georgia. She's still talking about that, dude. So it's like there's going to be a couple Democrat Congress people talking about this until the day he leaves office. So I got to go with Brexit.
Well, speaking of leaving office, let's talk about the people that hope to evict the president from office in a year and a half, because it's time for 2020 watch. We should get some music for that.
20 watch. All right.
So, the first thing that I wanted to talk about was Marianne Williamson, who was everybody's favorite. I have no idea who that chick is from the last debates. Went on the Rubin Report to talk to Dave Rubin about her campaign and how she's going to defeat the president with love. Did you get to listen to that?
I did. I finished it a couple hours ago, and I took notes.
Well, what did you find out?
Well, I mean, first of all, I found it to be almost unlistenable. I mean, when you hear a person like introducing themselves and telling their story, that's always okay. She talked about her background. She's like a new agey type writer. She got famous, basically she's into like secular religion and got famous in San Francisco during the AIDS crisis in the 1980s and 90s. But once they started talking policy and stuff, I mean, dude, it was unlistenable. It was circular feelings. I mean, it's just that's kind of the problem in this, not a right thing, left thing. It is right now. It's more prominent on the left, but it's on the right and the left. When you try to legislate with feelings, it never works out. Is you put a dollar symbol on feelings. And that's basically at this point what like reparations is, what feminism is. It's all kinds of stuff. It's what social justice is. It's what like cancel culture is, hate speech, all these things that the left does, and the right has done this at other points in history, and they do it to a certain extent now when they play to like the hyper America crowd and like look what they're doing to our nation. It works on both sides, but right now they're trying to legislate things that are all subjective feelings based things, and they're asking you, they're making you say it makes sense, and it makes no sense. So that's basically a lot of it. What it was like, this is injustice, and Ruben's like, how unjust? Like, how unjust? Like, what's the dollar? Well, how do you measure it? What's the and it just she got she got a little animated at points, and it was almost unlistenable. And I was listening at 2 times speed, so made it a little more palatable. But it
Well,
was
and
it was a
Dave
thing.
does he does ask the hard questions. No
Yeah,
doubt,
I
that's
really
part of the
like him
reason.
as an interviewer. Yeah,
Absolutely, I would love to get him on my show. I'd love to be on his show, honestly, but
yeah.
maybe I should email him, see what'll happen. Ah, who's this guy? Who's this guy whose follower account is trailing Stephen Ignoramus?
Well, you got me there, man. You gave me some tips. But yeah, I mean, it was like he had some good questions, and I don't know, she had some decent she she had some decent answers, like just from the like a soundbite point of view. But when you dig a little deeper, it's just that there's no way to measure these things, and when it's based on like past group shame and past group guilt, it's just like you literally have to get every single person involved story going back hundreds of years, and that's impossible and be a waste of time. What are you going to do? Set up a bunch of committees to study the study of the study? And you're going to waste time, years, and lives that way. And it's better just go forward, and so that's a lot of the arguments coming from, I don't know, she's pretty woke crowd. She said some things that aren't like hard left, in terms of like, she doesn't believe all Republicans are racist. That's good. She doesn't think that. Some other things that I don't remember, but like we need to be thinking about America. That's a thing that you don't hear from like the hard left. But it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but you're asked to take it seriously, which is very hard.
Well, speaking of being asked to take things seriously, let's talk about Bernie Sanders and how he pays his staff.
I actually don't know much about this one. Why don't you brief me on this one real fast? Because I saw a few headlines on it, but I kind of skipped them. What's going on here?
So, Bernie Sanders has been an advocate to raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And this has been one of the big talking points of the Democrat Party since Donald Trump got elected. And even beforehand, this was something that we were talking about during the 2016 election. Now, it comes out that Bernie Sanders is paying his staffers salary, $36,000 a year salary, to be on his presidential campaign. But given the amount of hours that they have been working, it has calculated down that they're making just a touch under $11 an hour when you factor in what overtime would be and and the amount of hours that they're putting in. So now people are going after Bernie Sanders for being a hypocrite on his $15 an hour minimum.
Good. Good.
That is the only proper response to that.
Yeah, snake eats its own tail.
Well, and Styx was talking about it this morning, and I was listening to it, and he's absolutely right. Bernie is trying to pie in the sky and say that we're never going to run out of money because we're going to take it from every rich person who's going to perpetually be rich for the rest of time. So we'll never run out of money. But now he's running a campaign, and he's realizing that there is a finite amount of money.
Oh, Bernie.
Plus, he lets his campaign
Sorry.
people unionize, which is part of where this is coming from.
Yeah, there's that Margaret Thatcher quote that it's like socialism works fine until you start running out of other people's money. I guess now it's Bernie's money.
Well, and in essence, on a campaign especially, you are running out of other people's monies because it's all donation driven.
It's literally other people's money. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the minimum wage at all. I don't think there should be a federal minimum wage. And, it's just, I don't think that a country needs to be told what the minimum you can pay someone is. You can handle that by state. You can handle that by locality or whatever. The market's so complicated. I don't get it. I don't think anyone gets it. And so it's, $11 sounds fine. I wish it was zero. And Maybe if there was a minimum wage for what you could pay campaign staffers, maybe, I don't know, but I don't know. It just seems like poetic justice.
Well, and I was talking to Tenchi over in uh, John Roberts' server. We were talking about
Hmm.
minimum wage one morning, and Tenchi is absolutely for raise the minimum wage. And nobody can afford to live in a two-bedroom place on minimum wage anywhere in the country. I'm like, really? Because around here, it's actually pretty easy.
Sure, you can. It's very easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and
live somewhere
yeah,
where it's cheap. I mean, and
yeah,
he's coming.
exactly.
He's coming to it from a Florida state of mind too, where a lot of the snowbirds are running out and retiring and spending all kinds of money and driving the price up on everything. Whereas here, and I'm sure that you have a lot of that in DC too. You've got a lot of political activists and politicians who are getting paid exorbitant amounts of money from the people and the lobbyists and the Soros and Koch brothers. So, I mean, the price over there is probably pretty high too.
Yeah, I mean, you can make it. I mean, I don't know. I haven't done the calculations, but it's expensive here, but it's not, I don't know, $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. Um, so
Yeah.
that's, $600 a week, then taxes.
Hmm.
You know, you'd have to live broke in my neighborhood, but there's other neighborhoods, and it's like, I mean, I would have to do those calculations, but I'm pretty sure you could make it work. I mean, you wouldn't be able to go get drinks every night, but because that's what people around here do.
Hmm.
But I don't know, $15 an hour is a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It
So
may
I
not
don't know.
seem
Yeah.
like a lot either, like where you are, but where I am, $15 an hour is a huge wage.
Yeah, it's a ton of money. And the more troubling is like it being the minimum. It's
Hmm.
like every single job has to pay that amount. There's so many jobs that aren't worth that. I mean, like, yeah, it's a ridiculous idea. And do you hear Rashida Tlaib gave a speech today advocating for 20?
Yes, I didn't hear the speech, but I saw the headline on it.
Yeah, I just saw the headline, so it might have been fake news. I don't know. But yeah, it's like, so. I mean, one of the ways to fight this, in my opinion, is like whether it's a right. Like, to me, I mean, at this point, I have to claim myself as being like on the right. I mean, that's how like everyone who talks politics would classify me. But I like operating in the realm of ideas more than right and left. But the answer to this is to just, they say 20 or they say 15, they say 12, they say 11, you say 0, because
Hmm.
that's what I'm actually for, is 0. No federal minimum wage. It's not the
State,
government's
maybe.
job.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. State is fine. That's totally fine. I'm a big fan of states' rights. I'm a bigger fan of community right, of like local rights. But yeah, I mean, it's got to stop. So what I'm going to do is just 0, none, just abolish it. Income tax too. It's bullshit.
Now, speaking of zero, that's actually exactly where Beto O'Rourke's polling numbers are currently.
Nice. Wonderful transition, sir.
In the news today, Beto O'Rourke hit zero point 0 in polling numbers. So now he is staying in for now because he was invited to the debate stage for what reason I don't know, but yes, he is polling at 0 right now. I mean, this is a three-person race at this point, realistically.
You think so? Like Bernie, Harris, Biden? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's Biden, Warren, Harris at this point.
Okay. Oh, you don't think Bernie has a shot?
No, no, Bernie is toast.
Really? Wow. Why do you think that?
Well, for starters, I don't think he's running a serious campaign.
Okay.
I think he's running a spoiler campaign. He's taking
Mm,
revenge on the DNC for what they did to him in 2016. I don't think he went into this believing he was going to win.
interesting. I've heard a lot of people that I trust say that. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Huh. I mean, see, but I don't think that Harris. See, I mean, not Harris. I don't think Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden are serious. I mean, but maybe that's my bias talking, because I just like get lizard people vibe from both of them, and I get like crooked cop vibe from Harris. And I just don't. Maybe I just don't like. Man.
I think Harris is coronated already, and they're just trying
Hmm.
to run the numbers and rig the numbers to make sure she wins.
I can see that. I can totally see that.
But I also heard the guys at Pod Save America talk about how we needed to get Elizabeth Warren into the White House as soon as possible, all the way back in February.
Oh, she's so gross.
Husband, would you like a beer?
Oh, she's so gross. Like, I mean, she is the fakest of all of them. Like, and I guess that's one of the you like have to be fake. But I was driving in upstate New York and I saw Beto for president sign on the side of the road. I was like, can you imagine what frame of mind you have to be in to not only want Beto as your president, but to put a sign on your lawn that says that? I was just like, damn.
Well, as I close out 2020, I always ask the guests the same three questions because I think they're the best measure of where the campaign is going, and I like to see how different guests see things and how the answers change from week to week. So the first question is, looking at statistics and polling of the past week, statistically, which candidate do you think has the best shot of winning the presidency in 2020? Or not the presidency, but the nomination
Of the Democrats.
of the Democrats.
I think kind of like you said, I think it's got to be Harris at this point. Unfortunately, I mean, but I don't know what fortunately would be. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. So Harris, I think statistically she's the best shot. Yeah.
Okay. Now, say the Donald strokes out, and obviously Pence is not in any point ready to take on the presidency and campaign this late in the season. I don't think if this happens that Pence wins, but say like Trump strokes out or something, he can't be president after 2020, and you have to have anybody currently on the Democratic field right now as the president in 2020. Who do you pick?
Yang.
The Yang
Yeah.
gang?
Yeah, I vote. I would pick Yang. I look because I mean I might be gullible or whatever, but I'm a sucker for just people from the outside with big ideas. Like he's got a bunch of ideas. Let's see if they work. I mean, it might bring upon the collapse, but it might be coming already. You know, like so Yang. I mean, I used to be Tulsi. I mean, maybe Tulsi. I don't know. I mean, she's really anti-foreign war. I'm into that. I'm gonna change my answer, Tulsi, because Yang is he wants to ban assault weapons, or at least he says that, and he also is more pro-choice than Tulsi. So yeah, Tulsi. I mean, the foreign war has been my thing for 15 years or so, and just to see us get out of the Middle East, that would and that's if she's able to do it. But so Tulsi, unfortunately.
Just so you know, I'm sending emails off, and I don't know how they're going to happen, but I'm actually trying to get into contact with the media director for Tulsi's campaign to try and get her to do the generational gap, or not the generational, the Freedom Scoop tour.
Whoa.
3
That'd be
shows,
intense.
3 nights.
That'd be intense. I'd be on board.
So if that happens, I'll definitely let you know. But
Yeah.
last question, pure entertainment value. No statistics, no whatever you would rather. Who do you want to see be the nominee to go into the debates against Donald Trump out of the Democrat field?
Oh, Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, of course you did. I would never get sick of hearing Pocahontas so many times.
You know that's what's
I would
going to be,
not-
too.
Oh, of course. I mean, he'll be dropping pow wow chow left and right. For sure. I mean, maybe Cory Booker. I mean, but like that's not entertainment. That'd just be like a slaughter, But yeah, I think Elizabeth Warren. I guess maybe honorable mention to Marianne Williamson. That'd be entertaining. So Elizabeth Warren, maybe Yang as well. I mean, I don't know what would happen if Trump is trying to go like personal and Yang tries to go policy, and then but Yang is forced to go personal back. Like, I don't know what would happen there, but definitely Elizabeth Warren.
I'm almost starting to change because I always said Bernie because of the accents thing.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Not
I'm
as funny as Pocahontas. Yeah.
I'm ready to say Biden because I want to see the push-up contest.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, so I mean, like if they were to fight, like that's what I've been saying for a while is that like if you bring back claymation celebrity deathmatch, I mean, they've been talking about I mean, I don't remember what he said. He's like, Joe, creepy Joe, go down hard like a dog. Like he'd go down swinging, but I'd get a couple in. He like challenged him to a fight a couple of years ago or something like that, and it'd be so funny. And I don't know if you know Stefan Molyneux, but he commented on Joe Biden said something about like Trump being racist, and he just commented on Joe Biden, you smell kids' hair, like you smell little children. And I think there'd be a lot of that from Trump if they were to go head to head. Like, listen, you smell kids. You don't have the right to talk.
Well, I've got two more little quick hitters here, both on the foreign policy. I know we're
Sure.
over time where we needed to be right now, but
Yeah, that's cool.
let's hit these out of here and let's go support our friends.
Cool.
So, as we mentioned when we were talking about Area 51, Iran has captured two British ships off the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I'm not a foreign policy expert, and I don't know all of the details as to why the ships were sailing there, but this goes on to a series of events that Iran has been involved in the past few weeks that have been trying to draw either England or the United States into a war with Iran. So, one of the first questions I have is an outside force trying to draw us in a conflict with Iran, or is this Iran itself trying to jump outside the bounds of the Iran nuclear deal?
When I first, started hearing about this back in, February or March or whatever, I mean, I've got people like in my family and people that I've listened to for a while that have, said that we've been trying to go to war with Iran for 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that Israel's been a big part of that, of trying to bring us in there. I mean, you've had Israel saying that that they're 5 years away from a bomb for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that there's like a zero chance of outside influence would be very dumb. But and so when this first thing happened with the attacks in the Gulf of Oman with like the limpet mines, and then the Houthi rebels like drone bombed an oil pipeline in UAE.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was like false flag city, but since then in the last month I've seen Iran make some plays, so it seems like it's 50-50 to me, or maybe it's 100% both. Like I think that Saudi Arabia and Israel may have a hand in this. I mean, they have a hand in the region for sure. But also you see Iran clearly making plays at this point. So I actually don't know. I mean, like I keep an open mind to the mainstream narrative as well as to the conspiracy narrative. And I've been more confused than anything else in the last 30 days because they, like I said, Iran has made plays. So it's just, and now, Russia and Iran are also allies, and it just, I don't know. It might be like a 5-way game of chess or something like that. But you can't deny that Iran has done what they've done. But and there was a whole dispute over them shooting down a drone of ours,
Mm-hmm.
in their space or international, and Trump pulling the plug 10 minutes left. I think that might have been an exaggeration, but the whole thing with the Middle East is very complicated. That's why it's the most fascinating thing to me of all the subjects that I've talked about in my show, and I could talk about it all day. But I don't know. I mean, you just don't know. But clearly there's Israel's a factor. Saudi Arabia has always been a factor, and whole thing's a mess. I'm not sure.
Well, and I mean, honestly, the whole thing with the Middle East goes back way further than, I mean, the last 25 years that you've been saying with Israel. I mean, Israel and Persia is back to the book of Esther. If you want to take it even further than that, in the book of Genesis, an Iraqi wanders across and forcibly takes over the Fertile Crescent, Israel. That Iraqi's name was Abraham.
Yeah.
Because he's not an Israelite natively.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. I mean, and so like you can, yeah, the last 25 years, just like of course, like the latest chapter. I mean, you go back to, you could say it started in 1914 or 1919, then you go back 100 more years, the Ottoman Empire, and it just doesn't. It keeps going back and back to biblical days, like you said. So, like I mean, I mentioned this earlier in the program. There's some things that we will never know, and even if we had all the man hours in the world, we're like not allowed to, man. Like
Hmm.
it goes so beyond our lives and like written word, and it's just like I don't know, but like I said, you can't deny that like that what you have to look out for is when we release a statement and and Iran says the same thing. That then you're like, okay, this probably happened the way that everyone says, and both sides are saying that they apprehended or I guess seized these two British vessels. I think they released one of them, and they released footage of the guys like eating on their vessel with Iranians there, and um, something's gonna happen or it's not. I mean, like we backed out of the deal last year. I've mixed feelings on that. That's one of the ones that you seems like you can't have a complicated view on. You're either in Obama's camp or Trump's. I
Hmm.
don't like that, and things a mess.
Well, let's talk about Puerto Rico then for a second. The people are rising up right now against the government in Puerto Rico, saying that the governor is completely inept and completely corrupt. Now, one of the things I want to point out with this, of course, is the fact that there are photos of the supplies that we sent to Puerto Rico after the hurricane that just sat on the airfield for months until they've got to the point of spoilage. Now, the people of Puerto Rico are no fans of the president or the GOP, and of course, the governor is going to be very left wing. But now it seems that they're trying to rise up and trying to change the government in order to bring some other kind of influence into there. What have you seen out of this so far?
Well, I mean, it's another one of those things. It depends on how far back you choose to go.
Hmm.
There's he got the governor like supposedly embezzled those funds from Hurricane Maria, but this whole dust up, the straw that might break the camel's back was because of these like private DMs from like a chat server that got released. It was like 880 pages, and they're saying it's for like slurs. And the thing I covered this a little bit in my program today, and it was interesting because they're saying the slurs and the profanity are why people are mad, but he was straight up like saying that political violence would be good, and not many people are mentioning that. It's just he used like homophobic slurs and things like that, and it's like, but he also talked about like some sheriff said that someone deserves a bullet, and then the governor said that he'd be doing them a favor. That seemed like the most inflammatory thing. And again, it depends on how far back you want to go. And people I know they're a U.S. territory, so they're not a sovereign nation, but like people have long memories about their own homeland.
Hmm.
So it just seems like people got fed up and they're in the streets. Like many of them now. Like Ricky Martin put out a video, and the dude from Hamilton put out a video, and it's just I don't know. They're mad about something.
Do you think this changes anything, or do you think this gets quelled?
Uh, I think it gets quelled. I don't. I mean, the guy already. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you kind of have to be like on the ground and have a little more inside knowledge or whatever. But it just seems like he didn't he apologized and said I'm not resigning. And I don't know, what are people really gonna do? I mean, maybe I'm here on the mainland, they're there on the island, and I'm like, oh, they're not gonna storm the castle.
Hmm.
But I don't think they're gonna storm the castle. I mean, maybe enough of his like military or inner cabinet quits that he's got nothing left, and he has to quit. But I don't see it being like they're just going to appoint another governor or just elect another governor, and then the same thing is probably going to happen in 10 years. I mean, they're broke, they got no money. um so I
Well,
don't know.
that's my next question. There is, do you think this is the push that they need to get statehood?
I hope not. I hope they don't become a state. I don't want any new states. I mean, unless you split one of the states up. But like I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm more a fan of them becoming a nation than them becoming a state. You know, like I said earlier, I'm a fan of nations, and I
Hmm.
think there's such a thing as the Puerto Rican people, and I think I'd be more on board with them becoming a nation and us supporting them for 10 years, and then they're doing their own thing. Like, you know, they're yeah. So I don't know. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't. If there's a poll, I'm sure they haven't asked all Puerto Ricans, you know, like that's why I don't trust polls. When you look at that's another thing I've done on my show is when I look at the methodology, they never ask more than 2 or 3 thousand people anytime in any poll.
Hmm.
And and then they say 50% of Americans don't like Trump. And it's like, no, that's 1,200 people, you know? So, but I think if you asked most Puerto Ricans, most of them would say they feel more Puerto Rican than American, and I feel like that's for a good reason, is because they are, and that's good. That's fine. They have the right to be a country. Then, you know, I don't know the history of why we acquired Puerto Rico, but I'd rather them be a nation than be a state.
Well, that's all that I have at this point here. One of the last questions that I always ask all of my guests, because politics is such a negative force. We see uprisings, we see nations going to war against nation, we see politicians screaming at each other. It's all very negative. So I try to end the show on a very positive note. So tell me about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with work or politics. It could be album that you're listening to, a video game that you've picked up, just something that helps you unwind as you get done with the daily grind of talking about politics or going to work every day.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I'm a musician, as I said earlier, and one of the things I do to unwind is I do a concert every like two times a month from where you see me, and I mean, it's not really, I know I don't get paid for it, and it's not my day job, but it is still a stream.
Hmm.
It's called the Know Nothing Party, and it's every 2 Wednesdays. It's the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. Just at 8 o'clock Eastern time PM right here. And I'm doing that this Wednesday. And I kind of do that to unwind. And I don't really prepare that much. I do write some songs and I do learn some covers, but it's all fun. And I use music to kind of, I don't know, unwind from this stuff. And then I'm back at it the next day. So that's kind of, I'm going to try to launch a couple new songs for this one. And I don't know. I use music to keep me sane, even though it keeps me a little crazy as well. You know what I'm saying?
Are you going to launch the one that you and I talked about off mic all those months ago?
Um, I don't know what you mean, sir. My brain is farting right now. Are you talking about the one that we talked about right before we got on?
No,
Or are you talking about?
I had asked you if you could cover a certain 70s song so I could use it as the outro.
Oh, bro, I need to learn that. I will not this week. I still need to do that. Dang, you caught me, bro.
I was wondering if you would remember that or not. I didn't want to
Dude,
push the
I
issue, but
completely forgot about that. Damn. Been so busy, man.
yeah, it's a busy time, especially for newscasting.
Yeah. So yeah, I know music's my thing, and I usually my job is teaching kids it. So you know, I still like to make it from time to time.
Well, I want to thank the audience for taking the time to listen to this show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on Twitter. That is at EdsBlogTwitter with a one in place of the I. Or if you're not comfortable with Twitter, you can always email me at edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. Or you can leave a comment below. I always try to comment back. I'm a little behind right now, but I always try to comment back. We can finish the conversation. If you want to finish the conversation with Mr. Stephen Ignoramus, Stephen, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
Cool. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ignoramus Steve, and you can find me on all other social media at Stephen Ignoramus. That is with a PH. You don't really use that much other than Twitter, but I am getting into Parlor right now, which is pretty cool. My podcast is called Call Me Ignorant, and you can find that on Apple and Spotify. And my daily stream is the Daily Ignoramus, and that goes on every weekday midday. And that's just on my channel on BitChute, DLive, Twitch, YouTube, all that good stuff. And if you want to subscribe and say hello, that would be lovely.
You have passed 200 subs, or you're not quite there yet?
I've at 215 last time I checked.
You're 100 ahead of
Mostly, I
me.
got like 75 in the last 4 days because of that Michael Jones interview. That kind of put me over the top. Now it's time for the next mountain.
Well, and if you are listening back to this on YouTube or BitChute, once again, make sure you go down. You'll find all the links for Steven's items down in the description. As you're headed for that description, hit that like button and that subscribe button if you're not already there. That helps YouTube tell everybody what they should be watching, and that helps us move up the charts on BitChute. We are on audio platforms, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Remember, if you are on iTunes, please leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts, as you are finding out because we talked about that on your Discord server. And lastly, Edgeworld is proudly partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group, as is Steven's show as well. Make sure you go over there, check out my show, check out Steven's show, check out The Generational Gap, which in a couple minutes we will be going and watching. And check us out. We are still holding open casting for writers. So if you can write, or you know somebody else who wants to write about the issues of the news, make sure you send me that email at edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. I will get you a sample article and we will see if we can make something work. As you alluded to earlier on in the show, we always say over here on Edgeworld, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Stephen, you have last word.
Cool. Yeah, I say this at the end of most of my programs. Go inform yourselves. It's kind of like your tagline too. It's like no one can do this alone, and if you kind of trust the corporate media too much, I mean, they have a vested interest in kind of making money off of confusion and censorship. Whichever way you lean, I don't care if you lean right or left or center or whatever. Just kind of do the work yourself and involve yourself with people that work small and try to find the truth yourself. And it's a good message. Take care, everybody.
Take care.